Shalom Sadiqim. Welcome, my friends, to this week's reading of the weekly Torah portion's top 5 most frequent Hebrew words, as well as 3 word pairs frequent in this week's Torah portion, Parashat Ki Teitsei. So you can find Parashat Ki Teitsei in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 10 through chapter 25, verse 19. Repeat after me. Lecha, lecha. Lecha means to you or for you, masculine singular you, lecha. The L means to or for, and the cha is the you, masculine singular you, lecha. Yolve, yolve. Yolve means he shall come or it will come. It's literally masculine singular, he shall come. The imperfect tense, the yud prefix or the y prefix here in the transliteration is what tells us who is doing it. That means whether it's first, second, or third person, and the yud indicates third person. It's also telling us that this is the imperfect tense, usually akin to modern English or modern Hebrew's future tense, and is telling you that it is one person doing it because there's no u at the end of the word to indicate plural. So yolve means and he shall come. Yolve. Leisha, leisha. Leisha means for a wife or for a woman, to a wife or to a woman. The la again means to or for, and isha, a woman, always insinuates a married woman, i.e. a wife. In fact, this is the normal way to say wife, both in biblical Hebrew as well as in modern Hebrew. There's no other word for wife in Hebrew. So keep that in mind. Anytime you see the word wife, know that it can also mean woman. And anytime you see the word woman, mean that it could also be understood as wife, if it is this underlying Hebrew word, isha. So although it is simply the feminine form of the word ish, man, but it has greater connotation than the word ish does in Hebrew. Hanna ara, hanna ara. Ha is the definite article, the. Na'ara is a young lady, but do not understand it as a young lady in the modern sense, but rather it's a young lady in the sensibilities of ancient peoples and cultures. So the earliest explanation regarding the meaning of this word that I'm aware of, at least, and it's an ancient explanation, you find it in the Mishnaic literature, explains that a na'ara is specifically a young lady around the age of 12, and they specified as age 12 to 12 and a half, on the condition that she is pubescent, on the condition that she has manifested some outward physical sign that she is that she has reached puberty. So na'ara does not refer to a prepubescent girl, even if she's 12 or older. If she's not pubescent, then she is not a na'ara. And if she is under 12, she is not a na'ara. But although it is often translated as young woman, that is not always, it's not a young woman in the modern sense. So na'ara does not refer to like a girl in her 20s. It's more like someone in her early teens, right? Even though you don't have to agree with the ancient Jewish definition of this word per se, but know that the Jewish people are the only people who preserved the Hebrew language, and it's not going to be much different from the traditional understanding of Na'ara in Jewish tradition, even if you want to speculate. It's not a little girl, and it's not a young woman in the modern sense of a woman in her 20s or 30s. Ahicha, ahicha means your brother. The part is what means brother, and then the cha means your, singular masculine, ahicha, your brother. The syntax is different from English. In English, we put the your before the object which you possess, such as your brother, whereas in Hebrew, we put it after brother your, or brother of you. That is the way you always express possession in Hebrew. Ahicha. This is also a great opportunity to point out for those who like to say that classical pronunciation of Hebrew is preserved among basically all the Middle Eastern Jewish communities, should just be disregarded because it's obviously influenced by Arabic, as we see from this letter het. This is a wonderful opportunity to point out the inconsistency of that argument, because if that were the case, this should not be pronounced ahicha, but rather achicha, which is actually the way Ashkenazim would pronounce it, Jews of Europe. The irony is that the Jews of Europe actually pronounce this word exactly the same as it is pronounced in Arabic, and we know that the Jews of Europe did not get that pronunciation from Arabs. And so likewise, we know that the Middle Eastern Jews did not get this pronunciation from Arabic because this is not how you say brother in Arabic. In Arabic, it's ach, and in Hebrew, it's ah. So if anything, Ashkenazim took it from Arabic and not Middle Eastern Jews, although of course that doesn't make much sense. Either way. So ahicha, your brother. And for our top three most frequent two-word phrases in this week's Torah portion, le yove. Le yove means he shall not come. It's often translated as he shall not enter, but it literally means he shall not come. And that is significant because unlike many popular English translations of Deuteronomy chapter 23, which translate it as he shall not enter the congregation of the Lord, there is a significant nuanced connotation to this. And that is the regular word for enter does not have a sexual connotation, but the word yalva, come, does have, similar to English, a sexual connotation in Hebrew. It's not always sexual, but it is at times a sexual euphemism, though unlike in English, it is not profane. It is a clean sexual euphemism in Hebrew. And so we do not understand that phrase in Deuteronomy chapter 23 in Jewish tradition to be saying that the Canaanite nations are not allowed to join unto the people of Israel. That is not the way the Jewish people have traditionally understood that passage. Rather, it is understood that they are allowed to join the people of Israel. And this verse specifically is talking about what point at which they're allowed to intermarry with the native-born established community of Israel from the time that they join the people of Israel. So if they make peace, if the Canaanite nations in ancient times had made peace with the people of Israel, then from the point that they make peace and if they take upon themselves the entire covenant of Torah, then they would be one with the people of Israel as a nation, but they would not be permitted to intermarry with the already established people of Israel until after a number of generations passed. And this is for security purposes, as many nations around the world also have, even in the US. You cannot be a president of the US unless you were born in the United States. So similarly here, le yovo, he shall not come, meaning he shall not euphemistically enter into marital relations with someone who is of the established community of Israel, not until a certain amount of time has passed. All right? Bithal Adonai. This is the second word pair. Bithal Adonai. Be means in, with, at, through, by, a very, very common Hebrew prefix preposition that we should all prioritize memorizing. The bet prefix, bit, and be. So bithal means in or with a by. The congregation or the community or assembly. Again, we mentioned, although kahal does often mean congregation or assembly, it can also mean community, and that makes more sense here in the traditional understanding of this verse. It's not saying that those of the Canaanite nations who make peace with Israel and embrace the covenant with God in Israel, it's not saying that they cannot enter the temple. It's not saying they cannot enter a synagogue or pray with native-born Israelites. Rather, it's saying they are not to sexually come unto a native-born Israelite until a certain amount of time or generations pass. Ithal Adonai, the community of the eternal. And finally, our final word phrase, two-word phrase for this week's Torah portion is uvi'arta hara. Uvi'arta hara. The u means and. Vi'ar has to do with burning. Ta lets you know that you, the person I'm speaking to, or the person the speaker is speaking to, ta is saying that you did it in the past. It is the perfect tense, normally translated as past tense. But because we have a reversing vav at the beginning, this flips the tense to make it imperfect, normally translated as you shall. So you shall burn, uvi arta, and you shall burn hara, the evil or the destructive element. Uvi arta hara. So let's go through these one more time, and that will be it for this week's Torah portion vocabulary. Lecha, lecha. Try to remember what it means. Lecha, yove, yove. Leisha, leisha. Hanna ara, hanna ara. Ahicha, أخيك. For our word phrases, le yove, le yove. بقال الذنوي, بقال الذنوي. وفي عرطة هراء, وفي عرطة هراء. If you would like to find more resources for this week's Torah portion or any resources for learning biblical Hebrew or Hebrew in general, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel or to my Patreon, that is Authentic Torah. You can find my Patreon on patreon.com/Authentic Torah. And there you will find, if you subscribe for just $10 a month, you can get all 10 of the top most frequent Hebrew words in every week's Torah portion, as well as these three, as well as the three most frequent 5 or more word phrases from each week's Torah portion. Most Torah portions have several phrases, even sentences that repeat multiple times, and it is very beneficial to learn them. Instead of trying to learn random parts, it's easier to learn those parts that repeat the most. So for just $10 a month, you can have access to that and other Hebrew resources to enrich your learning the Word of God and your walk with the Creator. Please remember that these lists only include those most frequent words in each Torah portion that are not mentioned in the last few Torah portions. So if a word is very frequent in a given Torah portion of a week, but that word was also listed in a previous vocabulary list, then we are not going to list it here until we begin the next book of the Torah. So on that note, thank you for joining us with Jerusalem Hebrew's review of the top frequent Hebrew vocabulary of this week's Torah portion, Parashat Ki Teitsei. Until next week, Shabbat Shalom. Have a blessed and meaningful Sabbath. Shalom uvracha.